Welcome to the quintessential listening poetry online radio and YouTube podcast, streamed live from the heart of Washington, D.C. Here, you'll find a portal to vibrant voices, echoing souls, and an ongoing celebration of the extraordinary power of language. So, prepare yourself to join host Dr. Michael Anthony Ingram and his special guests as they explore traditional and spoken word forms of poetry.
Hello, everyone. In June 2024, I had the privilege of interviewing Jules Stevenson, a 21-year-old emerging poet from Selkirk, Manitoba. Jules began writing in her teens to cope with personal struggles, a journey that led to her first self-published poetry collection, Atrophy, at age 16. The book focuses on anorexia. Jules's poem, An Apology to My Cat, went viral on TikTok in 2023 with over 12.6 million views. Her poetry collection, Self-Portraits of a Girl Collapsing Violently Inward, released in March 2024, has earned critical acclaim. This is for its unflinching portrayal of sexual violence and digital trauma during the COVID-19 pandemic. Among her other themes, she frequently explores the body, feminism, and mental health in her poetry. Jules represented Manitoba at the 2024 Canadian Individual Poetry Slam, solidifying her place as a rising voice in poetry and spoken word. Join me for an illuminating conversation with this remarkable young poet whose fearless approach to difficult subjects is reshaping the landscape of contemporary poetry. Jules, what is poetry?
Poetry is so many things. Poetry is the layers and the layers stripped back. I see it very much as like the essence of life is poetry.
The essence of life is poetry. Please share more about your response.
The little poetic moments and the poetic things that I see all around me in my life are the things that I think like make life worth living. So like people around me, for me, I write a lot about my cats. I find a lot of poetry in them and in just kind of the love that I'm getting from them.
As I listen to you, you seem quite excited about poetry. What are you excited about?
I have always been excited about poetry, which, I think concerned my parents a little bit when I was growing up. Because, and there's my father. Hello, Father. I think it was a little bit concerning because I was like, I'm going to be a poet, right? Which is not a very typical path for people. But it's something that I feel so passionately about. And it's something that has really transformed my life. And it's such an amazing art form that I'm just always excited about it.
Jules, there are people out there who believe that poetry is dying, that it's not what it once was. What is your view on it? Is poetry still important?
I think that's a very common misconception. I don't think poetry is dying. I think it's just like with everything in the world right now in the process of transformation. I think, especially with my background, poetry is very much moving onto social media, and it's very much an online art now because it's short, it's succinct, it's very easy to translate onto a social media post like TikTok, Instagram, anything like that, and then reach a much wider audience than you typically would with print poetry. So I think it's just in the process of transforming.
Please share with me an early experience where you learned that poetic language had power.
So the first time I really encountered poetry was when the Canadian poetry team came to my junior high, and we went through a whole workshop and wrote a poem, and it was the first spoken word poem I had ever written. And I read it out loud, and it was just like the reaction that I got from people, and people coming up to me afterwards saying like, that is what you said is how I feel, which is something that I get a lot of. It was just absolutely amazing and very transforming.
What are some of the predominant themes of your work? What do you write about?
So some predominant themes in my work are mental health as a whole. I often am just journaling, and then those journal entries become poems. So it's a lot of venting about how I'm feeling and what I'm going through. So lots of themes of mental health, depression, anxiety. I write a lot about eating disorders and suicide as well. And then on the other side, I also really like to write about sexuality. So, and like different sides of sexuality. So with self-portraits of a girl collapsing violently inward, a very predominant theme in that book is going to be sexual assault, right? But then the books that I'm currently working on are going to be more about like embracing that sexuality and being comfortable with it and finding power in it too.
On this program, we champion causes that focus on mental health awareness through the art and craft of poetry. I usually host a program where I invite poets to talk about mental health and share poetry from an international perspective. So I'd like to invite you to be one of the poets.
Love that.
That would make me very happy. Jules, please share a poem.
For sure. So this is an apology to my cat. I'm so sorry, Moth. I'm sorry I didn't pet you when I got home. I'm sorry I filled my glass of water, but not your bowl. I'm sorry I didn't respond to your meows or your scratches. I'm sorry you always feel my pain. I'm sorry I'm always in pain. I'm sorry you heard me breaking and sobbing and dying behind that door. I'm sorry the police and the paramedics scared you. I'm sorry their boots were so heavy and dirty and they didn't take them off. I'm sorry that you saw what I did to myself when they opened the bathroom door. I'm sorry you saw the blood. Your little nose confused between instinct and love. Thank you for choosing love. Stepping around the blood and the big boots and the empty pill bottles. Thank you for shoving your head into my bloodstained palms. Thank you for loving me when I couldn't pet you back. I'm sorry I forgot to fill your bowl before they took me away. You must have been so scared and confused. I'm so sorry, my love. I promise I won't do that to you again.
Oh.
Thank you.
Wow, that's an incredible poem. So I can understand why so many people resonated with you. Tell me more about the purpose of the piece.
Yeah, so when I originally wrote it, it's one of the poems that just happened, right? I work as a barista. So I sat down at work and I wrote the poem, and then I went about my day and I posted it to TikTok because that's just what I do. I had absolutely no expectations. I was like, this is just a really silly poem about my cat and suicide. And then I checked back and I was like, oh my goodness, that is a lot of people. So originally there was no point to the poem. It was just me getting that out and venting that out. And then it's kind of transformed into this piece of art that people around the world are resonating with. People are telling me it saved their lives and it's changed their lives. And people are getting tattoos of moths and of my words, which is just so overwhelmingly amazing and life-changing.
Would you mind sharing with me a few lines from the poem that you felt most proud of writing? And also tell me about lines that you found challenging to write.
For sure. So I would say my favorite line in the poem is "Thank you for choosing love." So when I'm talking about my cat, his little nose confused between instinct and love, thank you for choosing love. So, and then that line, choosing love, has kind of become like a mission statement for me. Yeah, so I got it tattooed in the middle of my chest. The first thing that people see really or notice when they meet me is I'm choosing love, which is just, I think, so powerful and so life-changing for me to kind of shift my view like that. So that one was that's my favorite line in the poem. I don't think any of the lines were really too much of a challenge with this one, just because it was one that just flowed out of me. Yeah.
All great writers have great writing influences. Who are some of yours? What makes them great in your eyes?
Oh, there are so many. For like traditional poetry, I'm very inspired by Sylvia Plath. I think she very much championed writing about mental health, especially from a woman's perspective. And in reading her books and especially The Bell Jar, that was the first time that I was like, oh, I'm not the only one who feels like this. And then I'm also very inspired by Richard Siken. I love his imagery. It's just so weird and just uncomfortable, which I love. And then on the more contemporary side, I'm very inspired by an artist and rapper named Queen Herbie. So she has also very much like impacted how I view myself now and how I'm like passionate about my art and living through my art, because that's very much what she does too.
When you write a poem, how does it begin for you? With an idea, a feeling, a form, or an image?
All of the above. Sometimes I get this like weird image in my head of a lot of the time it's like has to do with decay. So I'm like, oh, I have this image of flesh decaying or flesh being like pulled back. And then I write it and I'm like, this is so weird. I don't know what this is about, but it's a cool poem. Other times it kind of starts as almost like an itch in my head. It gets more powerful over 1 to 3 days until I sit down and I write it and kind of lay it out. But yeah, every poem is different. Some of them start with a title, some start with an image, some a line, or just a weird concept.
Please share another poem.
For sure. So this poem is based on a true story of something that I actually did. So this is called How to Dig a Grave. Laugh. Joke with her sister on the way there about joining the Grave Diggers Union. Step into the cemetery. Feel the sting of late October. It is the last thing you will feel for a while. Take her out of the bag where she has existed for a year now. She is dust, the same color as the snow falling softly around you kneel down. Draw a rectangle in the snow the size she now is. Laugh. Joke. As her brother arrives to join the Grave Diggers Union. Hold her sister. Let her brother make the first dent in the snow, the sound echoing all the things she did not become. Pierced. Scoop. Take turns unearthing earth. How can anyone rest with all this noise? Pierce. Clang. A rock. It's red. Her favorite color. Pierced. Clang. Scoop. The Union states 3 feet deep for a cremated body, 1 for the Father, 1 for the Son, 1 for the Holy Spirit, lowering. Pierced. Clang. Scoop. Wonder if she dug this grave herself years before, a bottle in hand. It's getting easier to dig now, the more numb your fingers become. Pierced. Clang. Scoop. Try to forgive her for all the things she did not become. Pierced. Clang. Scoop. Find peace in knowing it is only 3 feet. She won't rot 6 feet under. Pierce. Clang. Scoop. 3 feet down and you can't feel a thing. Silent. Level out the bottom of the grave as the rest of the Union arrives to survey your work. Dirt on your hands, dirt under your fingernails, dirt under your skin for years. It is hard work finding peace. So you pray. Remember how cold her hands were, how cold you were before the digging turns you numb. Realize you are crying as you comfort her sister. Wonder why it sounds like the sky is cracking. Realize because your mouth is open, parched, screaming for her to stay as her brother lowers her into the grave. You worked so hard to dig. The Union approves. Pierce, clang, scoop, drop back into the grave. Feel nothing but the absence of heat. The absence of her numb as the earth folds back around her like God making Adam in reverse, pierce, clang, scoop, drop. She is white powder like snow. She is not fully in the past tense yet. How can you forgive her for all the things she did not become? Pierce, clang, scoop, drop. Realize you are shaking. Wonder how long you have been shaking for. There is quiet solace in acts of letting go, but how can you let go when the shovel is frozen to your hands? How can you let go of someone who wasn't supposed to leave yet? Pierce, clang, scoop, drop. You can't stop someone from leaving when they spent so many years trying to get away. Pierce, clang, scoop, drop. Pierce, clang, scoop, drop. Pierce, clang, scoop, drop. How can she ever rest with all this noise? Thank you.
I need a second to regroup. That poem was epic.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are you a spoken word artist as well?
Yes, I am.
I can tell. There's a lot of emotion in that poem. And the poem touched me, deeply touched me. And it makes me wonder, does it hurt you to write poetry? If not, why not?
I don't think it hurts to write the poetry. I think it would hurt to not write it.
Tell me more about your thoughts.
Because if I don't get it out, it stays inside of me and it just like swirls around and I need to release it. So with that poem, I wrote it in the 11th grade, right after my aunt passed away very suddenly and very tragically. There was just an outpouring of, I need to get this out. I need to process this. I need to go through what this was like. And it was very helpful in my healing process to write.
Are you willing to be hurt by the poetry of others? If not, why not?
I am definitely willing to be hurt by the poetry of others. I think that is the best part about poetry, is it's a way to share your pain and then take on the pain of others, but in a very positive and healing way.
What does empathy mean to you? Empathy in poetry.
I think you can't be a poet without being a very highly empathetic person.
Please share more of your thoughts with me.
Yeah, so I'm a very empathetic person. I always have been. I'm a sponge. So whatever the energy is around me, I'm taking it in. I'm taking in every little bit of it, which is very overwhelming a lot of the time. I don't like crowds because of it. And I have to keep my circle very small to kind of protect myself and that energy. But I also think that it's really an amazing thing too, because then you can take those thoughts and those feelings that you're getting from other people and translate it onto the page.
Jules, I've written a number of articles on the utilization of poetry to assist in the process of developing empathy. And one of the things that I talk about wherever I travel is the importance of understanding that everyone has their own unique lived experience. Yet there's still a universal commonality in terms of our feelings. We all know pain. We all know sadness. We all know happiness and joy. So when reading poetry, you may not understand the poet's lived experience. You will most certainly understand the feelings that go along with their lived experience. Jules, please favor us with another poem.
For sure. So this is a poem that I wrote this year, and this is going to be the first time I'm ever reading it to anyone. So this is a poem that I wrote to my abuser's mother. So it's kind of an open letter to her. And it's called Mary, Did You Know? Mary, did you know that the pit in your stomach was rotten? That the flesh you carried for 9 long months would come out of you snapping and snarling? Mary, did it hurt? When you were finally severed, your arms blessed with the bloody bundle of a baby, if you knew what he would do to me, would you still have wept tears of joy? Would you still have anointed his forehead with your lips? Did your joy outweigh my pain? Mary, I do not blame you for your offspring. You are a sheep, and he a wolf in lamb's clothing? Did he tear his way out of you with his teeth and his claws? Did you see the bloodlust in his eyes? Did you smell the sulfur in his smile? Mary, did you know? Did you see the signs? Did he ever come home licking his lips? His white pelt stained wine red with blood. Did he tell you it was his? Did you believe him, Mary, as all mothers must? Mary, do you know what your son did to me? The chaos he spilled, bright red and beautiful, across my life. Mary, oh, sweet Mary, do you still wash his feet in the temple? Do they still turn the holy water wine red? I do not blame you, Mary, for every son is a Messiah to his mother. But I used to be innocent just like you. My bones jutted and my knees bruised from praying. Mary, your baby ripped me apart from the inside out too. Oh, Mary, my sweet, innocent Mary, how could you not know?
Jules, I'm speechless. You write exceptionally well. My question is, when you're writing a poem, who's driving, you or the poem?
Oh, definitely the poem. I'm just holding on for dear life, honestly. Yeah, I have no control. Well, the first draft is done, and then I can look at it and be like, okay, like I have some control now. I can edit it how I want. But yeah, I'm definitely not in control.
You're not in control? What happens, for example, if there's a line that you don't like? Do you go back and change it, or do you leave it as is? The question is, are you satisfied?
Sometimes I am very satisfied with it. Like, Apology to My Cat, that one has gone through almost no edits. Same with How to Dig a Grave. But the one I just read, Mary, Did You Know? That one has gone through quite a few different iterations and variations, trying to get all of the lines in the right order. But I often do go back and tweak with it a little bit. I'll switch things. And yeah, just go until it feels right, which for some poems, like, I'm still going to be working on them for the rest of my life, I'm quite sure.
Jules, your poetry is quite visual. When I listen, it's as if photographs are being framed in front of me. What are your favorite parts of writing a poem? And conversely, what are your least favorite parts of writing a poem?
So that actually, my favorite part is being able to create an image. So I'm a very artistic person. I've always seen things through a very visual, artistic lens. I'm able to use weird metaphors or things to kind of show that image, which I think is just so fun. I love toying with it. Sometimes it'll take me like a week and I'll just be talking my boyfriend's ear off about this weird image that I have coming up. And he's like, okay. And then I finally write it and he reads it and he's like, I see exactly what you were trying to say now and exactly what you were thinking. And then my least favorite part is probably when I have, like, the very end of the poem, when I'm done writing it on paper or on my typewriter or whatever, and I have to write it on my laptop and kind of like digitize the poem and figure out what I'm going to do with it now. I hate that part. I push that to the very end.
Please tell me more.
I feel like poetry lives best on paper. So whenever I write it into my phone or my computer, I'm just like, it doesn't speak as much on there for me, but it is also important to do so I can like edit it properly and send it off.
Jules, you just made the statement that you feel poetry lives best on the page. So why do you share your poetry if you feel it lives best on the page?
That's a good question. I think it's just like, for me, it lives best on the page and like in my journal. But once I share it and I send it out there, a completely different beast that I have absolutely no control over. So when it's on the page and written, I have that control over it still. But as soon as it's out there, I lose that control, which is scary.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I sense that there is a relationship between your speaking voice and your written voice.
No, you are not wrong. I feel like my written voice and my poetic voice are the same voice, like my speaking voice. I read it the way I wrote it, and vice versa.
I believe the same thing, that if you wrote it, you should live it. You should bring it to life. That's extremely important to me. Please share a poem.
This is a poem called The Haze. When the haze comes back, it fills the air. Chaotic, consuming, I stop taking my pills. I stop eating. I stop texting my mother. I stop answering her calls. I am coated in the dim, heavy haze. My skin, gray. My hair, gray. My food, gray. My being, gray, gray, gray. It rises and consumes, and suddenly I'm out of bread again, and my phone bill is overdue, and I haven't texted anyone back in weeks, and the dishes smell moldy, and the clean laundry is wrinkled on the floor, and my mother is calling again, again, again.
I think I'd like you to share that one again.
For sure. When the haze comes back, it fills the air. Chaotic, consuming, I stop taking my pills. I stop eating. I stop texting my mother. I stop answering her calls. I am coated in the dim, heavy haze. My skin, gray. My hair, gray. My food, gray. My being, gray, gray, gray. It rises and consumes, and suddenly I'm out of bread again, and my phone bill is overdue, and I haven't texted anyone back in weeks, and the dishes smell moldy, and the clean laundry is wrinkled on the floor, and my mother is calling again, again, again.
As a poet, what do you think your work conveys about the human condition?
I think my work conveys a very vulnerable part of the human condition. So because I write a lot about my struggles with my mental health, it's a very vulnerable thing that I found that not a lot of people are as open talking about. So I think it really kind of speaks to those inner struggles that we all have and that we all feel. And I feel like it's so important to talk about.
So for you, is writing a poem letting your guard down or building a wall?
I would say it's probably more letting my guard down. I have a very difficult time just talking to people about my experiences if it's not through poetry. So poetry is my way of letting people in, of letting them see like the real me and who I am and why I am the way I am.
What a profound statement, because poetry gives us an opportunity to reveal different sides of ourselves. How do you handle the impact of writing poetry? Because you write about some very serious topics. How do you manage? How do you take care of yourself?
It's difficult, especially like with this new journey I'm embarking on with self-portraits of a girl collapsing violently inward. It's a very open and like dirty confessional about what it's like to go through this stuff. And I think it's very healing for me, but it's also very scary to be that vulnerable. So, because I'm scared of what people are going to say and what they're going to think about me, and the things that I've been through. But I also think it's too important to stay quiet about.
So are you hoping that your book will reach a broad range of readers, or are you targeting a specific audience?
This book chronicles my life during COVID-19, during which I was groomed and abused online. So my target audience is definitely young women and girls, and really anyone who has gone through an abusive relationship like that and suffered with just all of those horrendous things that happen when you're going through it.
In this world, there's good, there's bad, there's ugly, as well as indifference. What do you view as being the role of a poet in modern day society?
So a poet, I think, is a sort of generational voice. A poet is a noticer, somebody who views the world around them in a very unique lens, and then is able to translate that into a poem, and hopefully that poem is able to influence other people in that generation.
Your answer was absolutely beautiful, beautifully stated. I've had over 400 guests during the last 6 years, and I have never had anyone mention being a noticer, because I've asked that question over 400 times, and you're the very first one. So tell me more. Please talk to me. I want to hear more about the statement.
Yeah, well, that just comes from me. Like I'm all over the place all the time. I notice everything around me, all of the little details, just all the little things and the little noises, but also kind of the overarching themes and ideas of life and the people around me that I'm seeing. So I just notice things. I find that so many people are so caught up in everything else that's going on, things that aren't as important, like say their job, which unfortunately a lot of people have to be very tuned into. But yeah, I think it's just so important to slow down and take the time to notice. And that's definitely a poet's gift.
Are you a motivational speaker as well?
I am not. No, not yet. Not yet.
I hear your dad in the background.
I hear him laugh. Father, you're not muted.
That's fantastic. Your message is extremely powerful. It moves people. It moved me. I can't wait to attend one of your lectures, one of your presentations. And I'm serious. I'll fly all the way to Manitoba because I plan to follow your career. Right now, let's imagine for a moment that writing a poem is like baking a cake. What ingredients do you think should go into the baking of a poem?
Yeah. So for me, I find that one of the main ingredients of my poetry is trauma. Um, which is unfortunate, but it's also, I think, the most powerful ingredient that I have is that I have these experiences, and I was also given this gift of writing, and I'm able to like speak to so many people who have gone through similar experiences through that poetry.
Please share another poem.
For sure. This poem is called Violent Love. The boy and I sit on either side of the thin hospital curtain. My wrists are bandaged, his are handcuffed. Imploding girl, exploding boy. In the other timeline, we are kids. Swinging in unison, wind whips through our hair as we climb higher and higher. We are brave, we are unbroken, we are free. We reach anti-gravity, our stomachs suspended, our hearts full for a moment. We breathe the same still air. When I am discharged, I will fall back to a home, a warm bed, and a cat, and I will write a poem called Violent Love. When he is discharged, he will fall into a cell, a bunk, and a Bible, and he will punch the wall bloody, broken, beautiful. But for a moment, on either side of this thin hospital curtain, we breathe the same still air.
What do you think makes poets different from other people?
I think poets are very highly empathetic people, usually. They're noticers, and they just view the world in a very unique way. So for me, like my family, I am very different from them. My brother is a chemical engineer, can't draw a straight line with a ruler, but absolutely like brilliant with math and science and all of that stuff that I don't understand. Whereas me, like I view everything through a very artistic, poetic lens. Like I can't do math save my life. But I can write, I can draw, I can do everything else on the artistic side. So I think poets are very much an artistic people.
Speaking of being artistic, do poems change color in certain lights?
Oh, yes. I do think about each color in certain light. I would say one example of that is a poem I wrote in, I think, the 9th grade about my grandfather. And it was the first poem that I wrote where I was like, oh, this is really good. And then like we entered it into a couple of contests and it won something. I don't really remember. But the poem was about my grandfather shaking because he always shook. And now I definitely view it in a different light than I did then, since he's passed away this past December. So yeah, I think depending on the circumstances surrounding the poem and your life, it can really change to be a more like bittersweet poem than before.
What color is the poem now in this present moment?
I would say now that poem it's definitely heavier than it was before. It's a kind of a bit murkier of a color than it used to be.
What color is poetry in this present moment?
I think poetry for me right now isn't a color. It's very clear. It's very clear. It's very just visible and apparent, and there's nothing behind it. It's like glass.
You are very good at this. Please share another poem. I like the way you think.
For sure. This poem is called The Droopy Gray Monster. Bang, bang, bang. The droopy gray monster and I are trapped in a small windowless room. There's a wardrobe and a rug and a bed with a thin gray sheet. He and I stand in the middle, staring. We are all each other has. Bang, bang, bang. Someone is at the door again. I am scared. My monster is scared. I lead him to the wardrobe and push him in. I try to shut the door, but he doesn't fit anymore. I grab fistfuls and stuff him back in, but he spills out again, again, again. Bang, bang, bang. I rip him from the closet and pull him to the corner of the room. I grab the rug and throw it over top of him, but he is obviously a droopy gray monster with a rug thrown on top. Bang, bang, bang. They are growing impatient. I try to hide him under the bed, but it rests on his belly and lifts from the floor. He wasn't always this hard to hide. Bang, bang, bang. I'm so sorry, monster. I have to open the door.
Jules, what I'd like you to do is to please share with me the titles of 5 poems. Any 5 poems that you've written.
For sure. I have one named Jules. My Body, a Crime Scene, Mother Mirror, Trinity, and I have a series of apologies as well.
My question is, what role does a title play in a poem?
So I like to go for often very vague titles like Violence, Love, Mother, Mirror, Jules. Those ones I think don't really tell you much about what the poem is about, yet they're intriguing. You want to know, like, what does that mean? But I do also think there are titles that can really complete a poem. Sometimes the poem isn't done until you have the title on, and then that title can completely transform the poem in a way.
What comes first, the title or the poem?
Depends on the poem. A lot of the time, I think that I have the title first, and then I use that kind of to springboard off of. But other times, I really struggle to find a title for a poem after it's done because I'm like, nothing really speaks to me about it yet. So sometimes it takes a really long time.
Here's another question. All poets have favorite words that they use, words or sentences that they just can't stop using. What are 3 of your favorite words to use when you write poetry?
I really love the word again. I think it's very simple, and most people wouldn't think about it, but it's something that can add so many layers. So, like writing about trauma often isn't just a one-time thing. It's like a cycle that is continuing and continuing and continuing again. So I find that like there's so much emphasis that I can create with that word. Kind of the same idea with almost. I read somewhere that almost is one of the saddest words in the English language, which really, really spoke to me. So in How to Dig a Grave, I try to use almost a lot, talking about all the things that my aunt almost became, that she almost was. And I think that's really powerful. And then I like to use a lot of words like scrub. I like those action words like scrubbing or tearing or like anything like that, really. They pop up a lot in my work. And yeah, I think it creates a very visceral image.
Poets hail from all over the world. You hail from Manitoba, Canada. How has growing up and living in Manitoba shaped your writing?
So I'm from a town called Selkirk, Manitoba. It was a very big deal when we hit 10,000 people and we were considered a city. So that kind of goes to show you what it was like. And it was really a great place to grow up. Kind of that small town energy that you get in a small town, but it's in a kind of city, almost a city. I wouldn't call it a city, even though it technically is. So yeah, growing up in rural Manitoba, I think really shaped my work because it's very hard to stand out here, because not a lot of people do, I find. Like it's very much, how do I explain this?
Do you want to ask your dad? Do you want your dad to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a lot of great opportunities for me living in a small town that I wouldn't get in a big city. And like I'm always going to be a small town girl now. I think it's just it's where I come from. It's inside of me. Yeah, and I really I enjoy going back as well to see like these are the streets that I'm from and that so much of this poetry began on.
Jules, do you think your thoughts can be contained in a small town? Because when I listen to you, your voice takes on an ethereal, otherworldly, transcendent quality. I'm not sure if any of these descriptors fit. However, this is what you sound like to me. A person who recognizes that a complete life is three-dimensional.
Yeah. I liked when you said otherworldly. That one I think is very but yeah, no, I don't think I can be contained by a small town. I moved out at 19 and I moved to Winnipeg. And which is much bigger. It's still a very small city in comparison. I think we have like 1.3 million people here, maybe. That might just be the entire population of Manitoba though. Yeah, I definitely could not be contained.
Well, we've reached my favorite part of the podcast. I view it as being a mini poetry lovers concert. This is an opportunity for you to share 3 or 4 of your works back to back without interruption from me. Jules Stevenson, you're on the stage.
For sure. This poem is called My Mother and My Bed. The edge of my bed sinks down. Mother asks, "Where has my daughter gone?" Runs her fingers through the thick brown hair she gave me. I sink further into the black sheets. They engulfed me like smoke. I don't recognize you anymore. My eyes sting. The sheets still smell like him, like weed and wet copper. And Jules, what is happening to you? She isn't really here. It is only me and what he did. Please, baby, I miss you. I am so tired, but he won't stop. I am sobbing and my mother is silent. I am gone and there's nothing she can do to bring me back. This poem is called Jules. You're disappointed again. Too big, too broken, too used. You press your lips to my ear, say my name like a prayer. Jules, Jules, Jules. I stayed where I am, engulfed in your sheets. Jules, Jules, Jules. I think about never coming out. I think about dying. I think about drowning. I hold my breath and pray you'll run out of air. Jules, Jules, Jules. Your hand presses into my throat. You tell me how easy it would be, how much you want it, how much I would like it, how much you love me. I sink deeper. You tell me you would do anything for me. Ask why am I so ungrateful? You show me how much you love me time and time again, deeper and deeper into the black sheep. You are hungry. You are strong. You are right. I should be grateful. I should like this. I must have done something wrong again. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And then this poem is called My Body, a Crime Scene. You left my body a crime scene. Your fingerprints on my thighs, your laugh etched into my cheek. I have tried to purge you time and time again. I have scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed my inner thighs red, raw, open, but you won't get off. You won't get off. Your DNA under my fingernails, your shirt fibers on my skin, your saliva under my tongue. You won't get off of me. You are still here. I am not. I am in that infinite moment when your eyes glazed over and my scream got stuck in my throat. I feel your weight, the pressure. I am a ghost haunting your bedroom, sobbing into the black sheets. And then this last one is one that is very much a work in progress that I just created last week. And it's called I Am Not a Good Girl. I'm a wild dog of a woman. I am feral. I am stupidly brave. I see him and I am ready to fight. My lips peel back slowly. My tongue lolls and salivates. I show the white of my eyes and the yellow of my teeth, and I can already taste his blood. It is warm and wet and sweet. It is thick with steel and sharp with guilt.
Do you think you were destined to become a poet?
I think so. Yeah, I really do.
Please tell me more.
I feel like I've always had that poetry inside of me. I've always been drawn to poetry. I started posting my work when I was in the ninth grade, just as kind of like a digital diary almost. And, even then I was getting messages from people like saying that they feel what I'm writing. And then since then, it's just really like poetry has kept me afloat for a long time. It was a lifeline for a long time. And then I started taking it seriously less than a year ago. And so since then, everything has just fallen into place perfectly.
Poets and writers write for a myriad of reasons. Some write primarily to speak a message to their audience. Others write because staying silent is not an option. Why do you write?
I write from a place of survival, I think.
Okay.
I write to survive. Sometimes I write to keep myself alive and okay as I can be. So writing very much it's a lifeline for me.
What do you want your poetry to do? And where do you want it to go?
Yeah, I want my poetry to reach specifically like young girls and women who have been through similar things. And I want to be able to show them that there isn't shame in what you've been through. Because a very common abuse tactic that is used is to make the victim feel like it's their fault and feel ashamed for what they've been through and what has happened to them, even though like that shame should 100% be on the perpetrator. So I want to kind of like take off all those layers and show people what happened to me and what I went through and how I got out of it. And I want to be able to shift them in a way so that hopefully they can view themselves in a much kinder light. It comes with a lot of forgiveness as well. So I hope to help people forgive themselves for the things that happened to them.
What do you think you've learned about yourself as a result of being a poet? Who are you now?
Yeah. As a result of being a poet, I'm a very interesting person, I think. I've done a lot of really interesting things that, like my poor father didn't expect me to do. When I came home and I told him I'm going to be a poet, or when I came home and I was like, hey, I'm working in a sex shop now, or I'm working at a church now, or any of these things. So I think it has led for me to be very free. I find a lot of freedom through my poetry, and freedom to be myself and to explore, because I'm very much like a lifelong learner and I just want to keep learning.
Here's a twist to that question. What surprises you most about being a poet?
Probably the reactions I get, right? So I like, with apology to my cat, I thought nothing of it when I first posted it. And then people pulled so much meaning out of it, and it's become like so much bigger than me. And so seeing what people pull from my work is very surprising and very fascinating. Because it always surprises me. I'm like, that was just a filler line. And they're like, this changed my life. And I'm like, okay, I'm glad I could do that. I didn't know, I don't know what that line is about.
Jules, we've reached the end of our poetic journey. Where can listeners purchase your work?
Yeah, so Self-Portraits of a Girl Collapsing Violently Inward is currently available on Amazon. And we are working to get it into Barnes & Noble's next. And then after that is going to be Indigo/Chapters. But those ones we don't have yet. So it's just on Amazon.
Where do you go from here? What's next for you creatively?
Yeah, so creatively, I'm in the process of writing my next book. So my work is very autobiographical. So this next book is going to be, what happened after self-portraits of a girl collapsing violently inward. And it's going to be a very angry book. It's going to be filled with a lot of rage and a lot of female rage. And I think it's like I'm having so much fun with it, just letting it out and letting myself finally be angry about what happened to me and what I've been through. So yeah, that's going to be coming soon. And then also like I've been working, I do all of my like digital marketing myself. So I just made a website. I have a few really cool photo shoots that I'm going to be doing to pair with some marketing stuff that's coming up about self-portraits. So yeah, there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up.
Jules, you are a very talented poet, and you epitomize poetry's future. The quality of your work is outstanding, it's well written, and the imagery is exceptional. As I said earlier, you paint pictures with your words. My best wishes go out to you for continued success. You're a poetic star on the rise.
Thank you.
So I'd like to thank you for being here. I'd like to thank your dad for joining us and the family for joining us. The listeners, I thank you as well, because without you, there would not be a podcast. So to everyone, take care.
Still craving poetry? Hundreds of episodes of the quintessential listening, poetry, online radio, and YouTube podcast are available to listen to or download on iTunes, Spotify, and other streaming platforms. To learn more about the popular podcast or how to become a guest, visit www.QLPORYT.com. Till next time, take care and let poetry ring somewhere throughout the land.